In 2013, a movie shocked countless parents and left many saying they would never let their children walk to school alone again. A 9-year-old girl named So-won had always gone to school by herself. One rainy morning, she opened her umbrella and headed out as usual. But that day was different. A man wearing slippers suddenly blocked her path. The drunk man gave her a disturbing smile. Innocently, So-won worried that the man might get sick standing in the rain. Looking around and seeing no one nearby, she agreed to share her umbrella with him. But what followed was unimaginable. The man dragged her to an abandoned warehouse near the school. After hours of cruel abuse, So-won was left lying on the floor, barely conscious, with blood covering her arms. Using the last bit of strength she had left, she called the police herself. Soon, her parents received a call from the station. By the time they arrived at the hospital, their daughter had already suffered devastating injuries. Doctors explained that her body had severe internal damage, and she would face a long and painful recovery. Her mother blamed herself, believing that if she had walked her daughter to school that day, none of this would have happened. After many hours of emergency treatment, So-won finally woke up. But the first words So-won said after waking up completely broke her father's heart. At that moment, all he felt was guilt and helplessness. The only thing he wanted was to catch the man responsible. When he arrived at the police station, he learned something difficult. Even though fingerprints had been collected, the suspect still needed to be identified by So-won. Her mother immediately objected. She couldn't accept making her daughter relive such a terrifying memory. But the legal process continued. After psychologists confirmed that So-won was emotionally stable enough, photos of possible suspects were placed in front of her one by one. Then she saw it, the familiar face. Fear instantly filled her eyes, and she tightly shut them. The horrible memories returned all at once. To make sure there was no mistake, she had to identify him a second time. She looked toward her father. After seeing him quietly encourage her, she slowly raised her hand and pointed at the man. With her identification, the suspect was quickly arrested. But by then, the case had exploded nationwide. Reporters crowded outside the hospital hoping to capture photos and headlines, afraid that his daughter would suffer even more attention and emotional pain. Her father and mother tried moving her to another hospital room, but the reporters noticed and followed them. Her father picked So-won up and ran toward the stairs while her pregnant mother tried to block the crowd. So-won didn't understand what was happening. She only thought she had done something wrong. Eventually, they reached an empty room, but during the rush, her medical bag was damaged. Her father tried to help clean everything quickly. In his panic, he accidentally moved too roughly. So-won became terrified. She struggled to escape and looked at him with fear and despair. Her father suddenly realized his actions had unintentionally reminded her of the nightmare she had experienced. From that day on, she became afraid of all men. She even avoided speaking to her own father and hid under blankets. The cheerful smile she once had slowly disappeared. What made everyone even more angry was that the suspect denied responsibility during the hearing. He claimed he had been drunk and remembered nothing. The defense argued that the child's statement alone wasn't enough and requested another hearing months later. People watching were furious, but for her father, there was nothing he could do except wait. Unable to change the situation, the family focused on helping So-won recover. Her mother and friends dressed up as her favorite cartoon characters and performed for her inside the hospital room. Even in the hot summer weather, they kept dancing and singing just to make her smile again. Slowly, their efforts began to work. For the first time in a long while, a small smile appeared on So-won's face. But behind those moments of happiness, the cost kept growing. The hospital bills, treatment expenses, and rented costumes slowly emptied the family's savings. Even so, her father decided to continue. He rented a cartoon costume because he wanted his daughter to feel happy every day. From then on, he wore the costume and appeared in front of her regularly. He never spoke. Instead, he communicated through drawings and simple gestures. Only after watching his daughter fall asleep would he quietly leave. Little by little, So-won began living in a world that felt safe again. But she didn't realize that inside the costume was her father. As time passed, her physical condition slowly improved. But emotional wounds don't disappear quickly. She had to continue regular therapy sessions. The costs became overwhelming for an ordinary family. Still, many kind people heard about her story and offered support. Neighbors and strangers donated money to help. More than 5 months after the incident, So-won was finally able to leave the hospital. But going home wasn't easy. She still felt afraid whenever men were nearby. Her father carefully stayed at a distance so she could feel comfortable. While passing near the place connected to her painful memories, she suddenly became anxious. Her breathing became faster. After getting out of the car, she became sick. Her father wanted to help but hesitated, afraid of frightening her. When they finally reached home, they stopped. The entrance was covered with notes and messages. They were from classmates and people wishing for her recovery. Each message welcomed her back and hoped she could return to school someday. For the first time in a long time, it felt like life might slowly move forward again. Soon, So-won's first day back at school arrived. Her mother helped prepare everything carefully. Walking to school felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar. As she passed the road connected to her memories, she became nervous again. But then she turned and saw her favorite mascot. She smiled. She didn't know it yet. But inside that costume was her father. Her father quietly spoke with the teachers once again. He asked them to look after his daughter and help her feel comfortable at school. Some people might have thought he was doing too much, but to him, nothing mattered more than seeing his daughter smile again. Every day during his work breaks, he put on the heavy mascot costume and came to the school playground. Under the hot weather, he danced clumsily and waved at her from a distance. Every movement carried the same message. "I'm here." And every time she smiled, it made everything worth it. One day after school, something changed. So-won slowly walked closer to the mascot. She stood there quietly. Then she seemed to realize the truth. Inside the costume was her father. She remembered all the times she had avoided him, all the moments he stayed silent and kept his distance, not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid of hurting her again. She walked forward. Her small hand reached out, and together, father and daughter walked home side by side. When they arrived home, even her mother was surprised. So-won opened the costume herself. Her father stood there silently. She smiled brightly and gently wiped the sweat from his face. At that moment, no one knew whether the tears on his cheeks came from exhaustion or emotion. But for the first time in a long time, father and daughter truly faced each other again. Soon after, the final trial approached. But the family received difficult news. So-won would need to appear in court again. Without her testimony, the defense could argue that the suspect acted while intoxicated and avoid full responsibility. Her father felt powerless. He even visited the detention center, hoping to hear the truth directly. But the suspect showed little regret. That moment made her father feel even more hopeless. Back home, fear filled his thoughts. What if one day the man returned? What if his daughter had to live in fear again? The weight of those questions stayed with him every day. Overwhelmed by fear and anger, So-won's father could no longer stay calm. He kept thinking about the future. If the sentence was too short, his daughter would still be young when the man was released. The thought alone terrified him. At one point, his emotions became so intense that he felt helpless and lost. But everything changed when he realized that his daughter could hear his pain too. He understood that she needed hope more than anger. Soon the court hearing began. Once again, So-won had to face difficult questions. Even though she didn't want to relive those memories, she answered carefully and bravely. Her parents sat nearby, carrying emotions no words could describe. After her testimony ended, the accused entered the courtroom. Despite the evidence and witness statements, he continued denying responsibility. His legal team argued that alcohol affected his judgment and tried to reduce accountability. Many people in the courtroom felt frustrated and disappointed. The atmosphere became heavy. Then the final decision was announced. The sentence left many people feeling that justice had not fully matched the pain caused. Her father stood there in silence. He wanted to fight against the unfairness he felt. But before anger could take, he looked at her and realized something important. His daughter had already suffered enough. What she needed now was not revenge, but a future. Time slowly moved forward. The family welcomed new hope into their lives. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Healing didn't happen overnight. But with patience, support, and love, So-won slowly learned to smile again. And her father remained beside her, not as a hero, but simply as a father who never stopped protecting his daughter.